we have to participate in our democracy. So thank you for taking the time to be here. I think you're going to find this interesting. We'll all learn something that maybe we didn't know before. We're all going to hear something that may surprise us. We may say, oh, I already knew those things, but hopefully it'll not only provide you with some information that is useful, but also some encouragement to be a cheerleader, especially during this time when people are, feeling so, there's a lot of concern and a lot of fear and a lot of discouragement, but we still have the opportunity to participate in this whole process. Our voices matter. So thanks for taking the time to be here. I am going to turn this over to Catherine Bewley. You, I hope, know Catherine. You may have had a chance to spend some time with her. Unfortunately, she's in her last couple weeks with us. She has been doing her internship from the School of Social Work over these last few months. She's been with us since August. She is primarily focused on advocacy work and systems work, working closely with Francisca, myself, and Jay. We've been happy to have her with us and wish her well as she's graduating. So this is one of her final projects, and she and Francisca are going to be leading us today. And I'm going to go ahead then and turn it over to her. So Catherine.
Hi, thank you. So let me just start sharing my screen here. Jay, how do I make it so that they will hear my audio?
There's a little button when you click to share that you have to toggle over that says like share audio or something like that. So when you click share, you toggle the button.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So today, if it will, I'll show a video, then we'll go over how to register to vote, how to actually vote, when to vote. Francisca will do a testimonial on democracy and why she's so excited to vote. And then we'll have a little interactive activity and a Q&A. So first, let me get this video going.
Citizens have the right to vote. Your vote is your voice. Your vote elects the politicians who decide how your tax money will be spent, from fixing roads and bridges, building schools, to supporting the NASA space program and helping other countries in need. Your vote can decide the local school board and the President of the United States. All American citizens, whether naturalized or natural born, can vote. But who decides how we vote? Well, under the U.S. Constitution, each state can decide their voting laws. For example, Indiana and Texas require a photo ID to vote, and they can decide what kind of photo ID is acceptable, like gun permit, driver's license, college or military ID. States also choose where the voting booths are located and how many of them will be provided. State governments can pass these voting laws as long as they don't discriminate. Yeah, right. We'll get to that part a little later. The legal voting age in the United States is 18. It used to be 21. But young people protested, saying if they can be drafted into war at 18, then they should be able to vote at 18. So the 26th Amendment lowered the voting age. For most of this nation's history, women did not have the right to vote. Suffragettes, suffrage is an old fashioned word for the right to vote. Suffragettes started protesting for equal rights back in 1848. That's the year women and men met in Seneca Falls, New York, at what we now call the first Women's Rights Convention. Women wanted the right to vote. Unfortunately, the white women decided to discriminate against the black women who also wanted the right to vote. So black suffragettes started their own organizations. You see, black women needed the right to vote twice as bad because they faced discrimination based on race and on gender. Those were awful times for people of color in America. This country enslaved people, took away their rights, and made them work for free until a civil war. If it hadn't been for black soldiers, the North would have lost the Civil War. After years of oppression, black people finally had their rights recognized in 1868 with the 14th Amendment. Soon after that, black men gained the right to vote with the 15th Amendment in 1870. That same year, 1870, America had her first black United States senator, Hiram Revels. More than 4,000 black men were in state, local, and federal political offices. But, then came the backlash. The Ku Klux Klan attacked black voters, and discriminatory laws were passed to crush the power of the black vote with poll taxes and literacy tests, which made people take a test and pay taxes before they could register to vote. Some people were killed for trying to vote. Yes, in this country, for some people, gaining the right to vote was like fighting in a war. Even when women finally won the right to vote in 1920 with the 19th Amendment, most black women in the South were left out again. And what about Native Americans? They were not considered citizens until 1924. Laws also tried to limit Latinos and Asian Americans from voting. State laws were so unfair that the country had to change the Constitution with the 24th Amendment that finally ended poll taxes. But the murders and acts of brutality were still happening. Sadly, prosecutors ignored these attacks on citizens who only wanted to vote. Finally, in 1965, after peaceful protesters were attacked on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, President Lyndon Johnson pushed Congress to pass the Voting Rights Act, protecting voters. That did not stop attempts to undermine voting rights. Some states will not allow citizens to vote if they have a felony conviction, or they are on parole or on probation. Incarcerated people in America cannot vote at all. A democracy like ours still has a long way to go. Sorry to bring you such bad news, but you should know that for every step forward, like being able to mail in your vote instead of waiting in line, those who want to suppress the vote find new ways to make things even harder. Don't let them win. Fight for your vote by voting, no matter what. Let's review. All citizens have the right to vote. But American history is filled with horrible laws and violence to try to stop people of color from voting, which shows how powerful your vote really is and how courageous those Americans who fought for voting rights were and are. If your vote wasn't valuable, there wouldn't be so many efforts to take it. Hang on tight to that vote. Use it to make a difference. Your vote is your voice. This is your democracy. Keep it strong.
Okay. Does anyone have any reactions to that they would like to share before we move on? Or I know it's kind of depressing, but it makes me want to go out to vote.
Catherine, that was powerful. I appreciate you sharing that.
Does anyone else want to say anything? Okay, I'll keep going then. So, I'm not sure how much of this is like everyone already knows, but basically to register to vote, you have to be a US citizen a resident of Arizona for at least 29 days, at least 18 years old, have not been found mentally incapacitated by a court, that would be if you're like been involuntarily committed into a psychiatric hospital or anything like that. And then if you've been convicted of a felony, you must have had your civil rights restored. And so there's two ways to register, using paper or online. The paper form you can actually print out and then just mail to your county recorder. It's not recommended to put it in the mailbox because it's fragile and can tear. So it's better to just take it to your county recorder in person. And then I put a little QR code here if you need to find your county recorder. And then these forms have to be delivered before the 29th day before the election. And if you register online, here's another QR code if you want to pull that up real quick. We have our own link that we created for LSS that you can check your voter registration, register to vote, change your address, that type of thing. So I'll give you a minute if you want to pull that up.
You can also go online if you're already registered. You can pull it up and you can go through the website to be able to have them give you text messages to track your ballot. So if you get a ballot by mail, you can, once you put it in the mail to send it back, they will notify you when they have received it. They'll notify you, I think, when they verified your signature, and they'll notify you when it's been counted. Which I just did. I had never done that before, and it was kind of cool to have that information.
And I will just say, I definitely encourage everyone to double check your registration status, even if you're pretty sure you're registered. Sometimes with a change of address, things will happen with your vote by mail status. So I definitely, I would encourage everybody to check if you haven't in the past couple of months, even just to double check that everything is still accurate, your correct address is in there, because they don't always get updated if you change your address through the post office or anything. It doesn't automatically update your registration.
And you can also sign up for the permanent early mailing list, and then you'll always get a mail-in ballot for every election, which is what I use because it's pretty convenient. So how to vote in person? There's two ways. Early voting. Locations usually open 27 days before the election and then close the Friday before the election. Or you can go the day of, and polls are usually open 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we don't actually have precincts in Arizona where you have to go to a specific place. We have voting centers, so you can pretty much go to whatever location you want, and there's usually not that long of lines, and you can go online and see if there are lines, and it will tell you like the exact amount of time you are expected to wait. Kind of like Disneyland. And then if you vote by mail, the last day to request a mail-in ballot is 11 days before the election, and the last day to mail your ballot is 7 days. So your ballots must be received no late. But if you miss the 7 days of mailing it before, you can drop it off in person to a drop box up until 7 p.m. on election day. And then voting by mail, you can sign up for the active early voting list, or you can request a one-time ballot. It's pretty easy to vote by mail. You just either request your ballot or you're signed up for the list and it just comes to you. And then sign the outside, put your phone number on it in case they call you to verify your signature. You can put it in your own mailbox or put it in a USPS, one of those blue boxes, or a ballot drop-off place. And just make sure you mail it 7 days prior or drop it off in person up until 7 p.m. on election day.
So Jay and Catherine and I went and had a whole tour of the county. Where were we? It was a really cool place where they collect all the votes.
I think it was a Maricopa County election center or something like that.
Yes. So I always had questions about your signatures, you know, because it always seemed to me like, you know, how do they still know that's my signature? I've lived here since 1978. I've been voting here since the early 80s. You know, how do they know that's my signature? And they compare your signatures through the years. Like they go back and compare your signature to the last one you did, to the last, which they compared to the one after that. They have all your signatures, and they actually train people to be able to verify your signature, even though it might look different than it used to, because they've been tracking your signature every time you voted. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, and the first time you vote by mail, they base it off of the signature on your driver's license. So hopefully your signature still looks the same as what was on your driver's license. But like my brother voted recently by mail for the first time, and they did call him and he had to verify that it was his signature. Susan, do you have a question?
Yes, I was also going to say in regards to the signatures, they're also looking at the age of the person. And when my mother was still voting, she was like in her early 90s, and they knew her signature at 90 was not going to look like her signature at 70. And that's another way that they track to make sure that, okay, this person's signature is matching it's an age appropriate signature. It's a lot lighter. It's a little more shaky.
And what was also interesting about that tour was that they said that they can send people out to like a nursing home and help them like not fill out the ballot, but if they need assistance in any way, and like an X will work if they're unable to actually do their entire signature. Right, Connie?
Yeah, that was fascinating because I had gone through that with my dad when he was no longer able to sign anything. And I, you know, was really nervous about what do I do, you know, and they told me I could have just called and they would have sent somebody out to do that. So if you do know people who are older who can no longer complete their ballot, they actually can supply somebody who will go out and do it, and they're certified to do it.
So voting in person, I have a QR code here where you can find a voting center near you, and you need your ID, of course. And then usually people are mailed this voter guide that they can bring with them that has information on all the candidates and propositions. And then you just give the poll worker your ID, verify your name and address. They'll print you a ballot and you go fill it out. And that's about it. So we just recently had the presidential preference election, which is kind of confusing because we do have two different types of elections in Arizona. There's the presidential preference and then there's the primary. So the presidential preference was just the you either are registered as a Republican or Democrat and vote for the president of your choice. And then the primary, you don't have to actually be registered as a Republican or Democrat. So independents can vote in this. They would just have to designate which ballot they'd like. And then the state primary, I believe, doesn't have the president on it because that was done in the previous separate election. So it would just be all of the other offices. So the state primary is coming up July 30th, and you have to be registered 29 days before, so July 1st. And this is a week earlier than it would have been because there was recently a bill passed where they moved it up a week in case there happens to be a recount, and they would have time to do that recount. And then the general election is November 5th, and you register by October 7th. So now I will turn it over to Francisca, and she can tell us about her experience.
Good morning, everyone. Well, to me, democracy is the greatest gift that we could have. And I always advise people, do not take your democracy for granted. As a Venezuelan American, it has been quite a journey for me. I was born in a country, wealthy country, the third oil producer country in the world, non-Arabic, and in OPEC. And very wealthy. I came to the US to study petroleum engineering. Little did I know that I was going to experience, I was watching television and I saw at 17, a first coup. Venezuela had a coup d'etat, and they tried to take over what we called our White House by force. And things were really, really surprising to me because I didn't know that that could change our, that could change the way for us to live, right? Our lives. So we didn't pay attention to that. And a lot of tension started happening in the country. People thought that we couldn't be any worse. And they voted for a man that was his speech was very authoritarian. It was very authoritarian. He knew better. He put down women. He broke up the family. It was very harsh, very difficult. But people thought that was the solution. People were tired. There was a lot of polarization, and people thought that was the solution. And they voted for Chavez. Now, looking back, we lost our democracy in 25 years. Very difficult. He copied the Cuba style of leadership, which you can see. I'm standing there in that picture. I'm standing at the Organization of American States, to stop Cuba, dictatorship, in Venezuela. So all that being said, as I see as an American now, I took an oath to defend this land from everything that comes against us, right? And it is my duty to share with you guys that do not take your democracy for granted. I believe this is the most important elections of our lifetime. And we do need to, as I see the parallel similarities from where I come from and what I see, I feel like I come from the future somehow. So just don't take it. Just make sure everything you can to vote, do everything that's in your power to vote if you are, somebody that is eligible to vote. That's a little thing. If you guys have any questions, I can share a little bit more. But that's my biggest advice to every American, to vote with consciousness, to pay attention to what they're voting for, what matters to them, what matters to you, what matters to your community, and make those smart choices. Do not take your vote for granted. Yes, Tony.
I wondered, Francisca, just and I apologize that I just don't know. I think that does Venezuela still hold elections?
Venezuela does not hold elections right now. They actually, it's interesting because this year they are trying to hold elections, but we do not have the strength of the international. We need the international community to get involved in order to have some transparency. Because like Cuba, they do have election, but it's only their own party, all their own group, and whoever they want them to vote for. It's pretty much like it's really not a real democracy. In a democracy, you have the ability for the people to choose who they want to vote for. So it is a very tricky situation right now in Venezuela. We do have the opposition, after fighting for so long, finally have a candidate that they all want, and it's a woman. She should be the next president of Venezuela, but the Madurismo that took over after Chavez doesn't want her. It blocked her from actually being part of the polling, of being a candidate for the upcoming elections. It is crazy how the polarization turns into picking authoritarianism. Then authoritarianism comes in place, change courts, change judges, changes several things, and then it is hard to take back your democracy. They destroy your education system, they destroy the institutions, and that way they take over, and it's very difficult to get it back.
Thanks.
So right now, what in my heart, what I tell everybody is like, please, there was so many sacrifices. The US already had a history of not an easy history, of gaining that, your vote. Don't take it for granted. Vote for everything that you can. When you see a city council, when you see a school board, everything that you can, judges, don't take that for granted. Just vote up and down the ballot. Don't stay on the top, because in the bottom, you will have, you have the opportunity to choose local, and those local elections make changes in your community. So do not take that for granted either. Sometimes it's a longer ballot, but some people are really wanting that, and we have that. So let's cherish that. Let's cherish that power that we have among each other to have the best, democracy that we can have.
Does anyone have any questions for Francisca? I did an interview with her, and her experience in Venezuela does sound eerily similar to what we're going through now. So I'll be writing up my interview and sending it out, and you can hear more about her experience because it's very interesting. But thank you for talking to us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And then the next thing is just a little interactive activity to say why voting is important to you. So if you go to menti.com and type in this code, you should be able to submit a response.
It also comes up with that code, or with the QR code.
Okay, we have one response. I agree with that. Can I X this so we can see more? Oopsie. Sure how to scroll up.
These are great responses.
Does anybody want to share their response? And
One of the movies that I saw a long time ago was Ironclad Maidens, I think, or something is the name of it, and it's a history of the suffrage movement, and it was full length, dramatic movie about it, and women, like, they died, people died trying to gain the vote, and it was just really impactful to me to know how much people sacrificed. I love that one.
Tony, in Venezuela, people are being taken as political prisoners for going against just because they wanted democracy so bad. One of the parties, their leaders have to hide in the Argentinian embassy, seek asylum, just because they were taken from the streets, yelling help because of the brutality. So this is why when you have democracy, you have to cherish democracy. You have to vote with intelligence. You need to work with conscience, and don't and make sure because once that thing changes, it's very difficult.
That's all I had planned for us, but does anyone have any questions or want to share their response or their reaction to anything?
I'll share my response. I want to share, I wrote down, voting is important to me because it is my chance to stand up for issues that I care about. If I don't vote, I'm giving up the chance to support candidates that can help our community. That was my answer.
Thank you. Does
Any other
anyone else?
comments?
Mark?
I would like to emphasize one comment that Francisca made that most people get lost and throw up their hands, and that is make sure you vote down and vote the entire ballot. And in particular, I say that because something that's near and dear to my heart, but a pain in the rear end, is the way they do judicial retention in this state. And there is information out there that is sent out with your ballot that talks about how judges have been rated and how they are viewed. And most of us have never been to court. We really don't know most of these people, and we don't know what goes on. And so there was an editorial in this weekend's paper taking to task people who wanted to vote against retaining the two Supreme Court justices that came down on the abortion issue, upholding the old law. And his argument was basically, these are qualified people. You should vote for them. And like most professionals, there's a difference between generally being qualified to do something and actually having the skill set that makes you good at that. And Connie, I think you probably understand that pretty well. People can be qualified in the social work area, but until you see how they interact with people, And until you see how they decide things, the simple fact that you are qualified doesn't mean you're good at it. And so what I would just ask people, I'm not telling you how to vote for these two Supreme Court justices, but what I am suggesting is that you talk to friends who are lawyers, or you talk to other friends who maybe aren't lawyers. My personal view is I look at the comments, and I personally feel if a judge, because they rate, lawyers rate them, and clients and court participants rate them in addition to the overall rating system. And just because a judge is competent doesn't mean he or she is a good judge. And so it's really important to look at the comments and look at the grading, because quite frankly, if a judge doesn't explain things to participants, if a judge doesn't listen, those are things that are asked for. That person's not a good judge. They might be qualified, but they're not a good judge. And, you know, my personal feeling is a judge that rates 78%, that's a C. Is that really the person you want to have judging your case? You each have to decide that, but I want to encourage people to vote all the way down the ballot and take some time with that, because that's really important. You know, we're going to see it in other things besides the abortion decision. When you talk about voting decisions, the argument at the US Supreme Court today, obviously we don't vote for that, but the argument about, you know, what does it mean to disrupt an official proceeding? You got people making these decisions in your courtroom. You want to have good people doing that, people that are fair and honest and aren't just bent to one political philosophy or another. I'm sorry it was so long, but I thought it was important.
Yes, thank you, Mark. There is in the voting pamphlet that gets mailed out like a whole section on judges, and it says like, it has like two, from what I remember, there's like two columns, and it says like, not in these words exactly, but like good decisions and bad decisions basically. And I was so surprised that some had so many bad decisions, and like not that many people are really voting down the ballot and voting those judges out. So I do think it's important.
It takes a lot of work and it's boring as heck. But it's important. And that's all I can say is that take the time, because there are helpful comments.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
great
why
when you get, go ahead, Catherine.
that's why I vote by mail, because I sit there and Google these people and spend a while on it. Caitlin?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to add that there's also, if the judges thing is overwhelming, if you have a trusted group or a trusted nonprofit or even a trusted political party, a lot of them send out information. There's a few groups that I belong to or political associations that I'm affiliated with, and I'll get a postcard in the mail that says, whatever you do, vote out these 5 or vote in these 5. And I'm going to do my own research, of course, and verify that. But if it's a place that you know aligns with your beliefs and you don't have an hour to do your ballot, you can always look for those to help make sure that either the really good ones are staying or the really bad ones, which I know is in the eye of the beholder, but that they're either in or out. And so things like that can be helpful.
Let's go.
Yes, I just want to share you something. Back in the days when, back in Venezuela, they were like, we are no Cuba, Venezuela is no Cuba. Nobody wants to believe something that horrible could happen to the country. I'm not saying that it could happen in the US. I could say, yes, it could happen. Anything could happen, right? Don't take democracy for granted. And also, make sure that the people that you know around your neighborhood, your family members that are eligible to vote, to participate. Intelligent, with your intelligence, with the, with educated vote. We need people with an educated vote, because apathy also hurts, because when you do not vote, somebody else is going to vote, and they're going to vote for the things that matters to them. So hopefully you don't want to leave that as a chance, somebody voting against against things that you that they don't matter to you, so you need to be careful. We all have to be careful and vote in family, vote with your friends. Make sure make sure that everybody participate in the democratic process.
Maddie?
And sorry, I just wanted to add to that too, that for anyone who has kids, some of my really fond childhood memories of learning about voting and learning about participating in politics were actually going to vote with my parents when I was young. So whether you're voting by mail from home, show your kids how you're filling out your ballot and talk to them about what you're doing. If you're voting in person, take your kids with you, let them go in the booth with you and see how it all works. I come from a family that has very strong values around participating in democracy and voting and really being involved in our process as much as we can be. And a lot of that started for me really early because those were encouraged in moments like that. So I definitely would encourage anyone who's got kids to involve them in the process too.
Do you want to say something?
Was that me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to share like a short experience of my life. I came from a country that when I came, I was not eligible to vote. But my sisters and my mom, who were teachers and professors in universities back in Afghanistan, their votes were sold and by bribes. We did not have a choice to vote. So when I came here, I was 19 years ago. I was able I got eligible. I got my citizenship, and the first thing that I did, it was my voting. It was very, very important to me because beside the other freedoms that I had in this country, the voting was the largest part of my life to feel that I belong to this country and I'm free and I do have the right and my voice can be heard as a woman. So yes, Maddie, I'm with you. I always take my kids for the last 19 years, for the last 14 years, sorry. My older son is 14, so I can't wait that he should be 18, so eligible just to vote. Though that they cannot vote, but when we came back home, it's every year that they have to vote for me and my husband, according to the choices of that, so they can practice what is the good things and what is the bad things, the negative things that they can face it about as a parents. So we teach them by small things. And my 8 years old, very excited to vote as well. And I teach them, I bring the ballot at home and I show them what we're supposed to, we can. And I always share my previous experience with them, the darkness and the brightness of my life with them. So yeah.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Someone else had their hand up?
I wanted to say something.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Deborah. Hi, everybody. When I was listening to the different experiences, it reminded me of being in Los Angeles. And I was probably in the 3rd or 4th grade. I skipped second. So just so you guys know, I skipped 2nd grade, just right over that. And I ran for office. And I hadn't even thought of that till this conversation came out. I ran for my class president. So I had to have a campaign and it was all about learning about the electoral process. And my mother, has a history of being very active in the community and the community activists. And I just remember us working on my slogan and the posters and a speech to give. And I had this beautiful pleated blue dress with ponytails down to my shoulders. And I just remember giving my platform. And I don't remember what it was. I'm sure it was something very creative, but it was just great to see my name on signs throughout the school saying, vote for Deborah. So I've always been very connected to the political process, and I truly believe that it's our God-given right and responsibility to do it. Thanks for sharing, you guys.
Thank you. Iris?
I just wanted to say, you have to vote because we are a social services agency, and if you don't vote, then you're not committing to making positive social change. That's how we move forward as a country, is by voting. And yeah, I have a very similar experience as Susan. My parents are immigrants from Korea, and I did a little bit more research. And when my father and his first family left Korea back in the 70s, it was pretty much during militaristic rule. Korea had a lot of militaristic, which I did not know. It was very similar to like the Philippines, and that really shaped his experience and how he voted and how the values that were passed down to me and my younger sister in particular. And so when he got his citizenship, one of the first things he said to me was, "When is voting season?" Because he didn't really. And I remember as a 12-year-old, because I didn't understand what he was trying to say because he couldn't really speak English. I thought at first he said voting season. And I was like, well, I think you vote in voting season is normally in like the summer, right? And he was like, no, voting. I want to vote for president. And so I was like, oh, voting, you want to vote. And so he's very excited, and he would always vote. Every single election, he would always vote. And so that was something that was very important to me. And I'm glad that that was something that was instilled in us, because I definitely don't take that right for granted, especially when you hear horror stories of what people went to defend their right to vote. African Americans in this country being lynched, being murdered. Asian Americans also being denied the right to vote just based on our race. Women, literally going on hunger strikes and then being force fed. I mean, just the brutality. And so you cannot take your right to vote for granted, ever. It is the way that we move forward. It is the way that our country gets better. And that's how we make our voices heard. So I just wanted to add that.
Francisca, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Something that came up when Catherine was asking me why did I become a U.S. citizen. I always had a love for the U.S. This is my home. But one of the things that motivated me was fear. When SB 1070 came along, Latinos, Hispanic community in Arizona, we were afraid. I was personally afraid that I was going to be separated from my kids and I was going to be sent out to the wrong country. Mexico was like, I'm Venezuelan. And I was in Bisbee freaking out because I didn't have my green card with me. And I could hear the voices of how it made me actually it was very sad and overwhelming for me. And I decided to become a US citizen, and I voted for the first time in this country. I never voted before. So do not take your democracy for granted. Please cherish your vote. Your vote, it is your voice. And this is the only way we can conquer fear and we support our communities.
I love all these conversations and hearing everyone's stories. It's very powerful. Does anyone else have some final things they want to say? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm glad we got to do this.
I do want to announce the winner of the drawing. Yeah, we got to do the winner for the first drawing. We're doing a drawing now, and then we'll do a drawing after the next webinar. So I included everybody who is on screen today, and then I included anyone else who had sent me an email prior saying that they wanted to be on. And I spun the little wheel. I have this thing online that I put everyone's name in, and it's a wheel, and I spun it, and the winner was Jeff. Congratulations. You won a Target gift card, and we'll do the second drawing. I'll include everyone on here, and then if anyone new comes to the next meeting, so everybody here still has a chance to win, and we'll do the second drawing after the second webinar, and then email it out to everybody who the winner was.
So voting is also learning about voting. It's not voting. Learning about voting is also rewarding.
Yes. For Jeff.
Well, you know.
Oh, it was great. Congratulations, Jeff.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And if you've got colleagues who were kind of on the fence, you can tell them that this was really great to do, and we're going to do it again at 2.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.